The night before my wedding, my brakes failed. I discovered this at 11 o'clock at night, standing in the parking garage of my office building, staring at a brake pedal that sank all the way to the floor without resistance. I had just finished 3 consecutive all-nighters preparing for the biggest merger of my career, and my blood sugar had crashed twice, and my hands were shaking. I was supposed to be home 6 hours ago, finalizing the seating chart for tomorrow's ceremony. Instead, I was standing in a concrete tomb, staring at a car that couldn't take me anywhere. I called Garrett, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 14 hours. It rang 4 times before he answered. His voice was groggy, annoyed. Naomi? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? My brakes are out. I'm stuck at the office. Can you come pick me up? A pause, then a sigh. The long, put-upon sigh of a man being asked to do something terribly inconvenient. That's completely out of the way. Naomi, it's a 40-minute drive. Doesn't your company reimburse late-night Uber rides? Just call a card. It's more practical. I've been working for 3 days straight. I'm exhausted. I don't want to wait 40 minutes for an Uber. I want my fiancé to come get me. Naomi, it's the night before our wedding. I need to sleep. You should too. Just call the Uber. I'll see you at the altar. He hung up. I stare at my phone, the screen slowly dimming, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break. I had broken before, in smaller ways, over the 5 years we had been together. This was different. This was the first clear, cold glimpse of something I had been refusing to see. I called an Uber. IT took 48 minutes to arrive. The driver was a kind older man who didn't try to make conversation. He dropped me at the townhouse I shared with Garrett, and I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, looking up at the darkened windows. He hadn't waited up. He had gone back to sleep. The next morning, Garrett left early for the venue. Best man duties, he said, kissing my forehead. I'll see you at the altar. His car, the silver Audi I had helped him buy, was parked in the driveway, and my car was still at the office. Take mine, he said, tossing me the keys. Just bring it to the venue. I got in the Audi. I adjusted the seat. I turned the key in the ignition, and as the engine hummed to life, the GPS screen flickered on. An automated voice filled the silent cabin. Asterisk, recalculating default route to Waverly Apartments. Pick up Little Princess, then proceed to Oak Ridge Amusement Park. Asterisk. Waverly Apartments, that was Mercy's building. Mercy Chen, Garrett's childhood friend. The woman he had introduced me to at a dinner party 3 years ago, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. She's like a sister to me, he'd said. We grew up together. And I had believed him, that I had smiled and shaken her hand and believed him. Little Princess. That was Garrett's nickname for her. He used it in front of me, laughing about it. She's so high maintenance, he'd say. A total princess. But she's family, you know? And I had nodded and smiled, because I wanted to be the cool girlfriend, the understanding fiancé, the woman who didn't get jealous of childhood friends. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I sat in the idling car, the GPS route glowing on the screen, and I hesitated. Then I reached forward and clicked on his navigation history. A list of routes appeared, pages and pages of them, almost all of them originating from Waverly Apartments. To the shopping mall, TO the train station, TO the airport, TO the amusement park, TO restaurants, theaters, hotels. Years of destinations. Years of trips. Years of Garrett driving Mercy wherever she needed to go. And one route, repeated almost every single day. 8:00 a.m. Waverly Apartments to Mercy's office. 6:00 p.m. Mercy's office to Waverly Apartments. Twice a day, 0.5 days a week. For 5 years, 0.5 years, Garrett had been her personal chauffeur, ferrying her back and forth through the city's gridlocked traffic. 5 years of morning pickups and evening drop-offs, 0.5 years of being available to her, every single day, without fail. I scrolled further back. The history went deeper. Before the twice-daily commute, there were different routes. Trips to the hospital, early in the morning. trips to a pharmacy late at night. And then, a date I recognized. The date of my 30th birthday party. The night Garrett had arrived 2 hours late, apologizing about traffic. I had forgiven him. I had always forgiven him. On that date, the GPS showed a trip to Waverly Apartments, arrival time, 6:47 p.m., departure time, 9:12 p.m. He had been with her for 2.5 hours while I stood in a room full of guests, making excuses for my absent boyfriend. I scrolled forward. The day I had my emergency appendectomy, Garrett had said he couldn't leave work. The GPS showed him at Waverly Apartments, the day my mother died. Garrett had said he was tied up in meetings and couldn't get away until evening. The GPS showed him driving Mercy to a spa, then waiting in the parking lot for 3 hours until her appointment was finished. The week before, when I had called him, almost begging, to pick me up from the office, the same week he had told me it was completely out of the way. The GPS showed him driving 45 minutes across town to pick up Mercy from a hair salon. The distance from his office to the salon was 31 miles. The distance from his office to mine was 2 miles. 0.2 miles was too far. 31 miles was on the way. For Garrett, no matter how far away Mercy was, she was always on the way. But no matter how close I was always out of reach. I turned off the navigation. I sat in the car for a long time, my hands resting on the wheel, my engagement ring glinting in the morning sun. The ring was a 3-carat diamond, flawless, the kind of ring that made other women gasp with envy that I had loved it. I had loved what it represented, the promise that I was chosen, that I was valued, that I was someone's priority. But I wasn't and I had never been. I was the convenient one, the practical one, the one who would call an Uber because it was more efficient. Mercy was the one who got the personal chauffeur, the childhood nickname, the devotion that spanned 5 years and thousands of miles. I reached down and pulled the engagement ring off my finger. I placed it gently in the cup holder, where it caught the light and sparkled like nothing was wrong. Then I got out of the car. I walked into the house. I packed a single suitcase with the things that mattered. My grandmother's quilt, my mother's recipe box, the first edition novel my father had given me before he died. I called a cab. I went to the airport. I bought a ticket to the first flight out, a red-eye to London. And I didn't go to the wedding. The text started 2 hours later. Garrett, confused. Naomi, where are you? The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Then worried. Naomi, this isn't funny. Everyone's asking where you are. Then angry. Are you seriously doing this? On our wedding day? After everything I've done for you? I replied from the airport lounge, my fingers steady on the screen. Check your cup holder. Check your GPS history. Then ask yourself what you've done for me. I boarded the plane. I turned off my phone. And I flew across the ocean. Away from the man who had spent 5 years driving another woman through her life, while I couldn't even get a ride home. The investigation that followed was thorough and devastating. I hired a private investigator from my hotel in London. Within 2 weeks, I had a dossier of evidence. Mercy Chun was not just Garrett's childhood friend. She was his first love, the woman he had wanted to marry before her family had disapproved of his lack of wealth and status. They had reconnected 5 years ago, 6 months before he proposed to me, and had been entangled ever since. The GPS history was just the surface. There were hotel receipts, joint bank accounts, a lease on a second apartment in both their names, paid for with money Garrett had skimmed from our joint savings. Garrett had been living a double life. I was the public fiancé, the respectable choice, the woman who would give him children and stability and social standing. Mercy was the secret, the passion, the little princess who would never have to call an Uber because Garrett would always be her driver. I filed for divorce before the marriage license was even processed. The legal case was brutal. My lawyers exposed everything, and Garrett's reputation collapsed. He lost his job. He lost his social circle. He lost Mercy, who had no interest in a man without money or prospects. The last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in a neighborhood far from Waverly, working a customer service job that paid a fraction of his former salary. He sent me a letter once, Pages of apologies and explanations and justifications. I burned it without reading past the first line. I stayed in London. I had always wanted to live abroad, but Garrett had told me it was impractical. I had built my career in New York, he'd said. Our life was in New York. So I had stayed. Now I left. I opened a small consulting firm in Mayfair, leveraging the skills I had spent 2 decades building. Within 5 years, it was the most sought-after firm of its kind in Europe. I was profiled in the Financial Times that I was invited to speak at Oxford, that I was appointed to the board of a Fortune 500 company. I never remarried, not because I couldn't trust again, but because I didn't need to. My life was full, fuller than it had ever been when I was trying to fit myself into Garrett's narrow definition of practicality. I traveled and I learned to paint. I bought a small cottage in the Cotswolds with a garden full of roses. I adopted a golden retriever named Gus who rode shotgun on all my road trips, his head hanging out the window, his ears flapping in the wind. Every time I drove, I thought about that GPS screen, the long list of routes, the years of devotion to a woman who was never out of the way. I never asked anyone to pick me up again. I learned to drive myself. And one day, years later, I received an email from an unknown address. IT was Mercy. She had heard about my success. Everyone had, and she wanted to apologize. She said she had been young and insecure and manipulated by Garrett's promises. She said she had always admired my strength, my intelligence, the way I had built a life without needing anyone to drive me. I read the email twice. Then I archived it without replying. Some roads don't lead anywhere worth going, and some rides aren't worth taking.